Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday live stream. So there's some things to go over, and we're going to talk about a new project called Nexus. Now, before we go any further, I have to make things 100% clear to everybody. This is a sponsored video. This is a sponsored video. Did I mention this is a sponsored video? It is a sponsored video. And Nexus is going to be one of our channel partners. Now, I have to tell you that when we have these new projects coming in, of course, the best time to take a look at them is when they're very early, and there's no better time right now as the crypto market and digital assets are pretty much tanking across the board. And if I would have done a little bit more of this last time when everything was going down, I think I would have been in a much better position. So take that as you will. Now, what we did is we interviewed Daniel. He is the founder and CEO, and I'll get to that pre-recorded video in a little bit. But just so you know that for Nexus itself, it is a pretty much 3-in-1 stop shop. You've got layer 1 that gets faster as people are added into it. It also has AI compute. It's also a decentralized exchange, and it's also for perps. So some of these things interest me, some do not. It's just pretty much how these things go. But I will tell you that one of the things that interested me right away was that Pantera Capital was one of the investors. If you know anything about Dan Moorhead and the different projects he gets into, it's usually pretty good. And the partners, as far as compute and AI across the board, look pretty solid. All partners looking great, layer 1, AI, web 2, and it's looking pretty good. And now just for me, so everybody is 100% assured, I will be signing up for earning rewards because this project, Nexus, already has 60,000 nodes in over 1,000 cities. And it hasn't even had its mainnet launch, which looks to be coming up, hopefully, in Q1 2026. So without further ado, let's break into the interview with Daniel from Nexus. Everybody, so we know that there's a lot of things that are going on in the altcoin world and the things that are coming up. What I'd like to do is just to talk about some new and emerging products, and one of those would be Nexus. So I wanted to get on somebody who could explain it to me very easily. So welcome, Daniel Marin, who is the founder and CEO of Nexus. Thanks for coming on the show for the first time.
Thank you, Rob. Really appreciate it. Excited to be here.
Yes, I'm excited because I just got to try to figure this out. So I'm looking at Nexus, and I like the aspect that it's a layer 1 DEX. I like that part because when we go through centralized exchanges and everything that has to do with KYC and AML, it gets a little bit tricky.
That's right.
And the thing that gets me about this one, it gets faster as more people join. Although I don't understand how that works, so you have to break that down for me. So
yeah.
Just break it down, like how that works, and explain Nexus in like a couple of sentences for the layman.
Exactly. So I think you described it actually very well, right? Nexus is an exchange layer 1. Our focus is on the concept of verifiable finance. And Nexus has a novel architecture, which is that it gets actually more powerful with the more people that join, which is a characteristic that was previously unseen on previous blockchains, right? And traditional blockchains based, for example, proof-of-stake based consensus, actually adding more nodes makes the blockchain slower, right? Because more nodes need to agree, right? Nexus, the blockchain, started from an origin of zero-knowledge proofs, right? So we came out of Stanford University. I founded the company when I was in my 3rd year of college. Exactly, that's right. That's our website. And we started building one of the first general purpose zero knowledge virtual machines, right? There's a lot of people that have worked in that area. For example, Risk Zero was one of the first ones that built a general purpose Risk 5 CKVM. Rob, maybe you've heard about the Ethereum 3.0 roadmap, right? Vitalik himself said, right, hey, the future for Ethereum 3.0, right, is going to be Risk 5 based, and we're probably going to enshrine a zero knowledge virtual machine. And the reason is it allows for vertical and horizontal scalability, right? Essentially, instead of relying on consensus, you compute a proof, right? And a proof is compute intensive, right? So you need GPUs, and with the more GPUs that you have, the more proofs you can compute, or the faster you can compute them, right? So if you have 100 GPUs or 100 farms of GPUs, the capacity at which you're able to compute a proof of computation grows horizontally, right?
Okay.
It used to be that before a couple of years ago, this just didn't exist, right? Zero knowledge virtual machines didn't exist. Ethereum had a different roadmap. And now the scalability roadmap of Ethereum features this future of full on CK at the layer 1. It happens that also at Nexus, we have some of the key people that invented zero knowledge cryptography. For example, our chief scientist, his name is D.A.N. He's one of the founders of zero knowledge cryptography itself, right? And our team originated from the Stanford Cryptography Lab. We've had this vision of building a next generation layer 1 that is able to support throughputs previously unseen, like unimaginable. And by that, we are referring to hopefully billions of transactions proven per second, right? You, Rob, are probably familiar with CK rollups, right? Layer 2s on the Ethereum layer 1, so on and so forth. It happens that if you combine that computing power directly at the layer 1, you can allow the layer 1 to scale horizontally with computing power. So that was the vision for Nexus. But as you are very well aware, and we are a very practically minded and business minded team, just building like the next gen throughput and latency layer 1 engine is not enough, right? Like technology is not enough to kill it in this market, so to say. And we recognize that the core component, or a core component to succeed, and this is part of our vision for what a next gen layer 1 is to enshrine native revenue generating applications at the layer 1 itself, right? Almost no blockchain does that, right? Except today, possibly Hyperliquid, right?
Right.
For example, Solana, Monad, Ethereum itself, they're just general purpose L1s, right? And they don't really have like a native way of value capture through like revenue generation, right? Like a business model. Over the past year, we've seen how important this is for users to find liquidity, for potential investors to reason through the tokenomics of the protocol, and so on and so forth. And so it's been for a few months since we have announced the launch of the Nexus decentralized exchange, which will feature a native perpetuals exchange enshrined at the layer 1. And how it works is this whole thing we call layer 1 is being CK proven by the provers in the network, right? Just as how you have validators in other blockchains, you have compute nodes in the Nexus blockchain. And the compute nodes work together to prove and scale the layer 1. So that is the direction that we're going, like the financial direction. We raised a $25 million Series A about a year and a few months ago, led by Dragonfly. Well, it was Pantera, Lightspeed, Dragonfly participated, so on and so forth. Our vision has always been that of building what you may consider, Rob, the ultimate verifiable world machine, right? That goes back to our origins of verifiable computation, and is still true today. It just happens that the core impact that verifiable computation brings to the internet is on the side of finance, right? On the side of global finance. And that's the direction that we're pretty excited to be getting started, I would say, with much more intensity in this upcoming year.
Got it. That's a lot. That's a lot to take in, I will tell you that. But let's break down something very simplistic. Let's go from this. You talked about layer 2 solutions, ZK rollups. Real quick, talk to us and just like explain it to my audience as if they don't know anything. They're just like a 10-year-old. What's the difference here? We're talking about layer 1s, layer 2s, ZK rollups. Why are they so fantastic, and where you guys are directing Nexus to go from?
Yes. Well, we think layer 1s, we think there is no team today from a business perspective that takes the approach of a true startup to innovate in the layer 1 landscape, except, possibly a couple like Monad, right? But for example, when you look at Ethereum, Rob, I'm a huge fan of Ethereum.
Sure.
But they certainly do not behave as a Silicon Valley-based San Francisco startup that moves at the speed of today, right? We have seen the opportunity for just massive innovation in the layer one landscape, both in terms of throughput, capabilities, business and commercials, for a really tight-knit startup-like approach for building a new layer one, right? And so, there is a belief, maybe your audience, and myself included, right? So people ask, like, why do we need another layer two? Why do we need another layer one? So on and so forth, right? And the truth is, this year, right, we're seeing a lot of assets get tokenized. We're seeing an explosion in prediction markets. We're seeing an explosion in perpetual markets. The Hyperliquid team has, for instance, truly innovated in the landscape by providing special purpose financial applications enshrined at the layer one level. And that shows how there's a lot of room to explore in terms of innovation within layer ones. Nexus was built with a similar belief that there is a lot of things to unlock at the layer one landscape, both at the infrastructure level and at the application level, that have not been seen before.
Got it. So it's just like a way to just to break it down. Got you. And then when you were talking about it, and you said that it's not so much about these other companies or these other chains like Ethereum kind of going into a specific direction, but you talked about tokenization. So with Nexus, I know you guys are DEX, Perps, 50x leverage. How do you guys see yourself as far as like tokenizations moving forward, especially for like real world assets and things like that? Because I have to tell you, me personally, I'm going to be at Tokenized Puerto Rico for this year, and it looks pretty interesting about like just tokenizing a whole ton of effects. My big thing will be real estate. So how does that work with you guys over at Nexus, tokenization, real world assets?
There you go. Well, the opportunity is huge, and it's getting unlocked this year and in the years coming, thanks to just the massive institutional interest and regulatory clarity that we're receiving, right, from the Genius and Clarity Acts. To give you a little bit of sense, Rob, and you may be well versed in this, right? Look, what is the rate of tokenization currently amongst different asset classes, right? From treasuries to real estate to stocks is less than 0.001%, or even less for some asset classes, right? And still, the amount of stablecoin supply today is around $300 billion, right? And growing. There is about what you may consider 1,000x to probably 100,000x in the growth of the market of tokenization, right? And you have people such as, or companies such as JP Morgan, right? And even the SEC, I think, was commenting the other day, right? On and the fact that a lot of these assets are going to get tokenized on blockchains. That's really big. When the government itself, right, it's saying things like this. And this is very important for exchanges, right? Both for centralized exchanges as well as decentralized exchanges, where we're seeing the maximum amount of innovation, not only on spot, but in perps, right? Because of the leverage exposure to synthetic assets. And so answering your question, right, one of the really exciting things that we're seeing in the industry is the perpification of a lot of asset classes. In particular, to allow systems that allow people to speculate on the price movements through perpetual synthetic assets of RWAs, right? So that you're able to speculate on commodities, on even private company stocks. For example, Ventrals, I think, is one company that's tackling that. Ostium is a perpetuals exchange that's tackling RWAs. And so, yeah, for people in this industry, I think there's a lot of growth that we're about to see in the next few years.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to see it. We're going to see growth, especially for like tokenization. But the real question is like, who's going to be that leader? Who's going to be second place? Who's going to be third place? So that would lead me to my next question. And you covered it a little bit. I want you to drill down with me. There's a ton of layer ones out there. I mean, there's a ton of layer ones. Hell, there's one called Ton, and I own it. So like for all these layer ones and Nexus, like what separates you guys from everything? And we talked a little bit about it. If you can just drill down.
Yeah, totally. Very much is the enshrinement of an exchange happening directly in the layer one, as well as other financial applications that will directly accrue revenue to the protocol.
Okay.
Right? And most layer ones, most layer twos, as we were discussing earlier, do not have a native revenue engine that they can use to fuel the liquidity in their ecosystem. At Nexus, our first step is a native enshrined exchange, but more exciting things are coming as well in the future, which we may be able to talk about next year. But that core focus on protocol revenue and liquidity is what we think is the most important for financial innovation in the space today. And to your earlier point, right, is like, who's going to be the winner, right? But not only that, but who is going to accrue value, right? Is it going to be the businesses that tokenize assets, right? Like securitized, for example? Is it going to be the exchanges that allow for the trading of these tokenized assets? Is it going to be potentially the wallets that allow for interactions with exchanges, or like DEX aggregators, out of which there are a few? It's yet to be seen. However, I would say the approach that we take at Nexus, we think that everything will become a market. Everything will be tokenized, and everything will be able to be traded with leverage and through synthetic assets. Hence, why likely this is the most important core engine of any blockchain to really, really, really nail down. And maybe, Rob, you have seen. Now, let me ask you, like, would you be able to guess what's the most important application on Ethereum?
For me, the most killer use case that I think about for like any kind of chain right now is payments. That's that kind of feels like to me like the big killer app, if they can all pull it off and they can tokenize things, like securities. But what is the most important application for Ethereum?
Interesting. Yeah. And by the way, on payments, right, we have Tempo and other such layer ones taking a stab at that, and as well as Plasma and Stable. Well, just objectively speaking, I think most people would agree that Uniswap is pretty much the heart of Ethereum, right? The heart of liquidity by TVL, by volume. I think they've crossed various billions of dollars in spot volume. This is only spot, right? Not only perps. We think that any blockchain, especially in the modern environment, that aims to be next generation competitive and really break the barrier on the financialization of things, needs to have an exchange at its core. And my personal thought, Rob, is that the worlds of decentralized finance and traditional finance are sort of like blending together, right? And also, exchanges and blockchains are sort of blending together. Hyperliquid started this transition, right, with an exchange that built a blockchain. Then we're an exchange, a blockchain that is building an exchange natively there. But not only that, you see centralized exchanges launching perp dexes too.
Right.
For example, we just saw Kraken launch NATO, which is a layer 2 with a perp dex, right? And well, Aster is not officially of Binance, right? But maybe they're really close, right?
Yeah, so come on, we know it is. Yeah,
exactly. Right? So we think that this verticalization, so to say, amongst the protocol layer and the traditional finance layer is happening, right? And our approach at Nexus is essentially moving up the stack so that users of the blockchain are maximally benefited from liquidity, a greater user base, and traders, right? Traders moving capital back and forth.
Yeah, I get it. So what we're talking about, like when I talk about payments, no one's using like Ethereum to Ethereum for payments. It's mostly we're using Tether, USDC, and we're using the top 4 different alts that'll power it: Binance, Ethereum, Solana, and Tron. So exactly. with you guys, I see where you're going. Instead of just going, okay, it's not just Nexus to layer 1. And it's not just Ethereum and Uniswap. It's Nexus. We don't need Uniswap because we are the DEX. We don't need the Aster because we're the perp. We don't need the tokenization because we have that part. So it's an all-in-one shop, right?
Exactly. And why do that, right, Rob? Like, is it just to like verticalize business and be more competitive? Sure, there's a part of that, but the truth is that when you combine these two together in a single system, true innovation can actually be unlocked. So my personal opinion is that what we're seeing today with HIP-3 in the hyperliquid landscape is a true innovation that has never been seen in the blockchain space that allows anyone to deploy their own perpetual DEX on hyperliquid, for example. And that is only unlocked when you allow this infrastructure to be reused by developers of the chain, right? For example, you cannot build a high-performance order book-based DEX on Ethereum. And the reason is Ethereum doesn't have high-performance order book functionality, right?
True.
So the enshrinement of this financial applications can actually unlock totally new types of businesses and applications that can reuse that infrastructure.
Got you. So are you saying, just to back up, are you saying that someone can come along and say, hey, Daniel, what I'd like to do is I'd like to open up, we have a DEX, I'd like to do some perps, but I'd like to use you guys as my base, and then I would create my own. So you're saying, like, we have a business here, you can take a chunk of that business and create your own business inside, and we'll do the infrastructure. Gotcha.
That's right. That's the whole promise of programmability, right? And blockchains, composability.
Sounds good. So I know we're getting kind of late, and I apologize for all the questions, but I needed to ask them. Let's define success, because I think it's important. I mean, we're kind of all over the place. When we talk about success, let's talk about success through measurement. You guys have a great roadmap. I took a look at it. It seems like a lot of things are focused on right now, Q4 2025, and we're kind of getting the tail end of that. We got 2-3 weeks or so. And then we come into the mainnet launch. It looks like Q1 2026. What does success look like to you for the next end of Q4, Q1, maybe Q2? And then if you could extrapolate that into the next couple of years, what would success look like for Nexus?
Totally. So for Q1, which we're super focused right now, is simply the NEXUS EVM mainnet launch, right? So this is the native EVM within the Nexus blockchain. And what is expected to come after that is an upgrade, a protocol upgrade featuring the enshrined exchange within a system that we call Nexus Core, which actually features this reusable set of infrastructure that any developer on the chain can use. And answering your other side of the question, right, is what about beyond Q2? Well, it's all about enhancing liquidity in the ecosystem, right? There's a few things that are now mentioned in the roadmap that we're working through and we're pretty excited about. But there is this direction of hyper financialization of everything, right? And as mentioned, right, we believe that everything will be an asset, everything will be traded, everything will be liquid, and everything that we do aims to really enhance that, whether that's from the product perspective, from the liquidity perspective, or from the performance perspective. For example, performance, you see here, the CKVM4, which allows us to further scale the validation capabilities of the blockchain.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's what we have for success. And this is a lot of information. I encourage everybody to watch this again so we can go over Daniel's answer. But Daniel, let's. I want you to wrap this up in a way, because I'd like you to come back and talk about that ZKVM 4.0. I'd like you to talk about how you guys are using GPUs, and it looks like the flops compute power a quadrillion amount, and how that is working into it. Because right now, as we get into end of Q4, there's a big talk about AI, and how not just about how crypto moves into that, but is AI a bubble? And it seems like there's a lot of things going on with you guys in AI. There's a lot of things that are going on with AI across the world. Especially, I mean, the Genesis Act just came out, or the Genesis Protocol for the White House, the United States. Oh. So when I take a look at this, I'm like, I think AI is the future. So we'd like to have you back and talk about that. But the last question, though, because I know your time is valuable, 2026 is right around the corner, right? Yeah. So when you guys are doing all these things, what is the final product? Say for like again, like you talk about ZKVM, you talk about the mainnet launch. What is the final product in say 2026? So I don't want to go too far out. Just where can you guys go to and get to?
Yeah, a next generation layer one featuring an enshrined exchange, allowing anyone to trade 24/7. That's pretty much it. Everything is infrastructure and enhancement of its throughput, latency, usability capabilities.
Okay, let's just perfect. That's an easy way to remember it. We can go from there. So Daniel, any other? But actually, before we take off, any other words of advice? Because you've been in the industry for a little bit of time.
Yeah.
So what kind of advice do you have for people who are, first of all, learning about Nexus, but just in the crypto sphere so far?
Good question. I would say, as a generally skeptical person, that people in the industry should think from a venture scale kind of way, which is only about 1% of the projects in each cycle make it, right? And when developers think about in which blockchain to build, or when users think on which blockchain to trade or something like that, you would want to trade on a blockchain that has at least a path towards sustained fundamentals, right? Like business fundamentals, right? And the market is starting to appreciate this. With Wall Street joining forces with the crypto landscape, that's how Wall Street's evaluating crypto as well. So I'm very excited to see the rising of fundamentals in the crypto space that can allow for seasoned, matured analysis of opportunities. That's what I would say.
Well said. I gotta agree. I'm just waiting for the thing that actually works and works well, doesn't break down, and can scale. That's all we really want. So Daniel, thanks so much for stopping by. We appreciate it. Everybody, everything we talked about, there'll be links in the description. You can find out from the roadmap to the website to more information about Nexus. That is it for this one. So Daniel, again, thanks for stopping by. We appreciate it. All right, let's jump back. Great, and that's it. So I want to say thanks to Daniel for stopping by and explaining what the heck Nexus is and pretty much everything in a nutshell. So if you just were here late, let me reiterate a couple of things. First of all, sponsored video. It was a sponsored video. Did I tell you it's a sponsored video? It's a sponsored video. And then also on top of that, Nexus is essentially a layer one that gets faster as people sign up and start using it. So the more people in, the faster it actually gets. It is actually a DEX as well. L1, DEX, Perps, leverage, AI compute. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I will be bringing Daniel back, and he'll talk to us about, like we talked about, ZK rollups. And then also for the compute power, looks like they have a quadrillion flops for compute and how it's all working together with Nexus. Well, that is it for today. If you like today's video, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing. When we talk about it's time sensitive. Again, there's a links in the description for everything that we talked about. And I personally will be signing up to earn rewards because Nexus is still on a test net. They haven't even hit a mainnet. And once that happens, I think there'll be some pretty big things. So you can actually use the computational power of your computer, sign up for this, earn points, which may or may not equate to a Nexus type of airdrop. I'm not 100% sure, but that's just what it is labeled out there. So that's it for today, everybody. If you want to stick around, I'll do a little quick Q&A, answer all your questions, and then we'll get out of here. So anybody have any questions for me after that? Let's see. Yes, sponsored. Meme, I'll see you today later on. All right. Boy, I bought more sweat coin and tomato coin. Isn't that what we'd all say? It's horrible. Tomato coin was, if you don't remember, it was a meme coin that we created for our digital asset news stake pool for all our Cardano stakeholders. And people did pretty well off it, actually. But yeah, let's see. Aether going well. Yeah, another compute rental out of GPU products that we talked about, oh gosh, over a year ago, maybe a year and a half or so. Friends here. Let's see. And then that's it. Lou Jatan says, all in one sounds like something. And yeah, I mean, if they can pull this off, that's pretty much what you want. You want everything in all one place to do the things you want it to do. It was hard for me to wrap my head around how you can become faster as a chain as more people come on. And when Daniel was talking about it, I'm going to have to ask him again to really break that down. Because usually, and we've seen this throughout the bull runs that happened previously, 2017, 2021, 2025, kind of. When people were using the chain more, and we saw this with Ethereum, we saw this with Bitcoin, we saw this bunch of different layer ones that are out there, it would just slow down to a halt, or the fees were astronomically high. And with Nexus, it actually goes in reverse. When there's more people on, it gets faster, and all that stuff. So yeah, it'd be interesting. And then Ashley says, time is rough to launch a new project, isn't it? You know, I like to go against the grain for some things, because I remember back in 2020, there was this thing called coronavirus. I don't know if you heard about it. It was a big thing. And when that happened, everything went in the pits, and nobody really wanted to get out of it after a while. But as we look back, we understand, oh, well, you know, the quantitative tightening, which started in end of 2017, early 2018, and then we had massive money printing or quantitative easing. So we had stopping of quantitative tightening, increase of quantitative easing. We had rate cuts happening and going to zero. And then we tried to understand things about liquidity. And if we would have paid attention to other projects out, I think we would have done pretty good. And I did okay, but I thought to myself, when we get to this point where we're at extreme fear and nobody wants to do anything, I'd like to go against the grain and talk about new projects. And it's not going to be something that's going to be on this channel a lot, just you know, a few here and there. But I think we could have done better just getting ahead of it. I remember hearing in the chats about, hey, Rob, you heard of this thing called Solana? It's going to be you know, pretty big thing. Have you heard about this thing called Avalanche? And oh, also, you know, Binance has its own token, and that'll probably be a big thing. And I just, some I dismissed and some I embraced. And I think if we just take a step back and go, what could be the next big thing? This is why we're here. Now, I can't give you investment advice, obviously. I'm not a financial advisor, but it's just something that I wanted to do just to buck the trend. All right. Mojo says, I find myself just looking at my silver bag more than my soul bag lately. That's depressing. Yeah, precious metals doing pretty good. And that is it, everybody. So I think we're good. That's it for today. So look, again, like the video, subscribe, take a look at those links in the description, go from there. Tomorrow we'll have Jerry V. Hall on, and we'll talk a little bit about compute and decentralized healthcare. Anyhow, that's it for today, everybody. Thanks so much. See you in the next one. Adios.